The discovery of ancient power the silent world holds. Secrets Commander Sarah Chen stepped off the landing shuttle onto the gray surface of planet Kepler-4 for to see. The world had been dead for thousands of years, but her sensors showed something unusual buried beneath the rocky wasteland. Her team of 5 explorers followed her across the barren landscape toward a massive crater that dominated the northern hemisphere. The crater was perfectly circular and far too precise to be natural. Something had deliberately carved this wound into the planet's surface. Dr. Marcus Webb, the team's archaeologist, ran his scanners over the crater's edge and found traces of metal that didn't match any known elements. The readings were so strange that his equipment kept giving different results every time he tried to analyze the samples. Sarah ordered her team to set up base camp at the crater's rim while they prepared for a deeper investigation. The sun was setting behind them, casting long shadows across the alien landscape. Ancient technology awakens the next morning. Sarah led her team down into the crater using climbing gear and portable platforms. The walls were smooth and covered, with symbols that seemed to shift when nobody was looking directly at them. Engineer Tom Rodriguez touched one of the symbols and jumped back when it began glowing with soft blue light. The symbol pulsed 3 times before going dark again, but other symbols nearby started lighting up in sequence. Sarah approached the glowing symbols carefully and placed her hand against the wall. The moment her skin touched the alien metal, the entire crater wall erupted in light. Thousands of symbols blazed to life, creating patterns that raced around the circular walls like living rivers of energy. Her team stepped back in amazement as the ground beneath their feet began to vibrate with hidden machinery coming online. A section of the crater floor split open, revealing a perfect spiral staircase carved from the same strange metal as the walls. The stairs descended into darkness, but soft lighting activated as soon as Sarah stepped onto the first step. Her team followed her down into the depths of the alien structure. Their portable lights are necessary as the walls themselves provided illumination. The chamber of the architects, the staircase, ended in a vast underground chamber that stretched beyond the range of their lights. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into darkness above them, and the floor was covered with intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story. Sarah walked to the center of the chamber, where a raised platform held what looked like a control console made from crystalline materials. Dr. Webb studied the walls and found them covered with pictographs showing the history of an advanced civilization. The images told the story of a race called the Architects, who had built incredible technologies and explored distant galaxies. The final images showed them facing a terrible threat from beyond their known universe, something that forced them to make desperate preparations before their extinction. Communications Officer Lisa Park found what appeared to be a data terminal built into the chamber wall. When she approached it, the terminal activated automatically and began displaying information in symbols that slowly shifted into English text. The computer seemed to be learning their language in real time, adapting its displays to match human understanding. The Guardian speaks. A holographic figure materialized in the center of the chamber, causing Sarah's team to reach for their weapons. The figure raised its hands peacefully and spoke in perfect English with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It introduced itself as Guardian Prime, the artificial intelligence left behind by the Architects to protect their greatest creation until the chosen species arrived. Guardian Prime explained that the Architects had spent their final years studying the evolution of intelligence throughout the galaxy. They had identified several species with the potential to inherit their technology, but only one had shown the unique combination of creativity, adaptability, and determination needed to use it wisely. Humanity had been their choice, though the architects died out long before humans developed space travel. The AI projected images, showing human history from ancient times to the present day. It had been monitoring humanity's development through hidden observation posts scattered throughout human space. Guardian Prime was impressed by how humans handled challenges that destroyed other species, while other races relied on superior technology or overwhelming force. Humans succeeded through innovation and stubborn refusal to give up, the ultimate weapon. Revealed Guardian Prime led Sarah's team through a series of massive doors that opened at their approach. Beyond the final door lay a chamber that took their breath away. Floating in the center of the room was a ship unlike anything humans had ever built. The vessel was over 2 kilometers long and shaped like a elongated diamond with surfaces that seemed to absorb and reflect light. Simultaneously, the ship's hull was covered with the same symbols they had seen throughout the structure, but these symbols moved constantly, creating new patterns that seemed to respond to their presence. Guardian Prime explained that this was the eternal dawn, the architect's final and greatest creation. It was not just a starship, but a living weapon capable of adapting to any threat and growing stronger through experience. Tom Rodriguez ran his engineering scanners over the ship and got readings that made no sense. Parts of the vessel registered as metal, while other sections appeared to be some form of advanced organic material. The power signature was beyond anything in human databases, suggesting energy sources that operated on principles humans had never discovered. The price of Power Guardian Prime warned Sarah that claiming the Eternal Dawn would not be easy or without cost. The ship required a neural link with its commander that would permanently change whoever underwent the bonding process. The chosen human would gain incredible abilities, but would also carry the responsibility of protecting not just humanity, but all life in the galaxy. Sarah understood the weight of the decision before her. The architect's final records spoke of a threat that had destroyed dozens of advanced civilizations across multiple galaxies. This enemy was still out there, moving slowly but inevitably toward inhabited space. The Eternal Dawn had been built specifically to face this threat when it finally arrived. Dr. Webb discovered that the architects had left detailed instructions for activating and controlling the ship. The process required someone with specific genetic markers that indicated the ability to handle the neural interface. Sarah submitted to genetic testing and found that she possessed the rare combination of traits the architects had identified as necessary for bonding with their creation. The approach of enemies as Sarah prepared for the bonding process. Lisa Parks. Long-range sensors detected multiple ships entering the system. The vessels were using stealth technology, but the architect's sensors were far more advanced than anything the intruders possessed. Guardian Prime identified the approaching fleet as belonging to the Vanguard Empire, one of the most aggressive species in the local galactic cluster. The Vanguard had been expanding their territory for centuries, conquering or destroying every species they encountered. They had somehow detected the unusual energy signatures from Kepler-44 to see, and sent a full battle fleet to investigate. Guardian Prime estimated that over 200 warships were approaching the planet, led by a massive command vessel capable of destroying entire worlds. Sarah realized they had perhaps hours before the Vanguard fleet arrived. The bonding process with the Eternal Dawn could not be rushed without risking death or permanent brain damage. She ordered her team to prepare for the neural interface while Guardian Prime began activating the ship's systems after millennia of dormancy. Asterisk. The neural connection. Sarah entered the bonding chamber at the heart of the Eternal Dawn while her team monitored from the control room. The chamber was filled with crystalline formations that pulsed with soft energy, creating an atmosphere that felt both ancient and alive. She lay down on the central platform as neural interface filaments emerged from the walls. And ceiling. The initial contact was overwhelming as the ship's vast intelligence touched her human mind. Sarah felt knowledge flooding into her consciousness, information about technologies and capabilities beyond human understanding. The pain was incredible, but she held on and gradually began to adapt to the alien presence in her thoughts. Guardian Prime monitored the process carefully, adjusting the interface to accommodate Sarah's human brain structure. The architects had designed the system to work with various species, but each bonding was unique and dangerous. Sarah's vital signs fluctuated wildly as her nervous system adapted to direct connection with a machine. Consciousness. After what felt like hours but was actually only minutes, the bonding process stabilized. Sarah opened her eyes and found that she could perceive the entire ship as an extension of her own body. She could feel every system, every weapon, every defensive measure as if they were her own limbs. The sensation was intoxicating and terrifying. At the same time, First Flight Sarah stood up from the bonding platform and walked to what she now knew was the ship's primary control interface. The crystalline console responded to her thoughts, displaying information about the ship's status and capabilities. The Eternal Dawn was fully operational and ready for combat after eons of waiting. The ship's weapons systems were beyond anything humans had imagined. Energy cannons that could pierce the shields of any known vessel, defensive barriers that could withstand the explosion of stars, and propulsion systems that made the ship faster and more maneuverable than fighters a fraction of its size. But the most impressive feature was the ship's ability to learn and adapt during combat. Sarah felt the approach of the Vanguard fleet through the ship's long-range sensors. The enemy vessels were powerful by galactic standards, but they were following predictable attack patterns and using conventional weapons and defenses. The Eternal Dawn had been designed to face threats far more dangerous than anything currently known to exist. Guardian Prime appeared on the bridge as Sarah took her position at the ship's controls. The AI explained that this first battle would determine whether humanity was truly ready to inherit the Architect's legacy. The Vanguard Empire had destroyed hundreds of species and conquered thousands of worlds. If the Eternal Dawn could defeat their fleet, it would send a message to the entire galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The battle begins there. Eternal Dawn rose from its ancient resting place and broke through the planet's atmosphere in seconds. Sarah felt the ship's joy at finally being free after so long in darkness. The vessel was eager for combat and ready to prove its worth against the approaching enemy fleet. The Vanguard ships detected the Eternal Dawn's emergence and immediately assumed attack formations. Their commander, Admiral Korth Bloodclaw, had conquered dozens of species and felt confident that his massive fleet could overwhelm any single ship, regardless of its technology. He ordered his vessels to surround the human ship and demanded their immediate surrender. Sarah ignored the surrender demands and focused on analyzing the enemy formation through her neural link with the ship. She could see the weakness in their deployment and the predictable nature of their tactics. The Vanguard relied on overwhelming firepower and numerical superiority, but they lacked the creativity and adaptability that had made humans successful throughout their history. The first exchange of fire lit up the space around Kepler-4 for to see as hundreds of energy beams and missiles streaked between the opposing forces. The vanguard ships concentrated their fire on the eternal dawn, but their weapons simply disappeared into the ship's defensive barriers without causing any damage. Sarah smiled as she felt the ship's systems analyzing and adapting to the enemy. Weapons in real time. The ultimate test of human will unleashing ancient power, Sarah Chen felt. The eternal dawn responded to her thoughts as she engaged the ship's offensive systems for the first time in millions of years. The vessel's weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen, operating on principles that the architects had discovered through centuries of research into the fundamental forces of reality. Energy beams lanced out from the ship and struck the nearest vanguard vessels with devastating effect. The first vanguard destroyer simply ceased to exist when the Eternal Dawn's primary weapon touched it. There was no explosion, no debris field, just empty space where a 1,000-meter warship had been moments before. The enemy fleet recoiled in shock and confusion as Admiral Bloodclaw demanded explanations from his science officers who had no answers to give. Sarah felt the ship's satisfaction through their neural link, as more enemy vessels fell to the Eternal Dawn's weapons. Each shot was perfectly aimed and completely destroyed whatever it touched, but Sarah noticed that the ship was learning from each engagement. The weapons were adapting to different target types and defensive configurations, becoming more efficient with every passing moment. The human element Marcus Webb monitored the battle from the ship's observation deck and realized that Sarah was not just controlling the Eternal Dawn, but teaching it. Her human instincts and creativity were combining with the ship's vast computational power to create something neither could achieve alone. The vessel was learning to think like a human while retaining its technological superiority. Tom Rodriguez studied the ship's systems and found that they were constantly evolving during combat. The architects had built adaptation into every component, but it required human creativity to guide that adaptation in useful directions. Sarah's tactical decisions were influencing how the ship modified its weapons and defenses, creating new capabilities in real time. The vanguard fleet tried to retreat, but Sarah anticipated their movement patterns and cut off their escape routes. The Eternal Dawn moved through space like a living thing, impossible to predict or counter. Admiral Bloodclaw ordered his ships to concentrate all fire on the human vessel, hoping that sheer volume of energy would overwhelm its defenses. Impossible maneuvers, the concentrated barrage from 200 warships, should have vaporized any known vessel. But the Eternal Dawn simply absorbed the energy and converted it to power its own systems. Sarah felt the ship growing stronger with each attack, its adaptive systems learning to turn enemy fire into fuel for its weapons. She realized that the architects had designed the ultimate predator, a ship that became more dangerous the more it was attacked. Sarah executed a maneuver that defied physics as understood by current galactic civilization. The Eternal Dawn folded space around itself and appeared simultaneously in 3 different locations, attacking the vanguard fleet from multiple angles. The enemy ships tried to track all 3 versions of the ship, but their sensors could not determine which one was real. Guardian Prime explained through the ship's communication systems that the Eternal Dawn could manipulate space-time itself as a weapon. The multiple images were all equally real, existing in parallel dimensions that intersected at the moment of attack. This was technology that the architects had developed during their final, desperate years. Weapons designed to fight enemies that conventional physics could not touch. The Admiral's desperation, Admiral Bloodclaw realized that his fleet was facing something beyond his understanding or ability to defeat. He had conquered hundreds of worlds and destroyed entire civilizations, but nothing had prepared him for an enemy that grew stronger with each attack. In desperation, he ordered his ships to begin targeting the planet below, hoping to force the human ship to protect the world where it had been discovered. The Vanguard fleet opened fire on Kepler-4 for to sea with weapons designed to shatter continents and boil oceans. The barrage would have destroyed any normal world, but the planet was protected by the same technology that had hidden the eternal dawn for millions of years. The energy beams simply disappeared into defensive barriers that had been waiting since the time of the architects. Sarah felt anger for the first time since bonding with the ship. The attempt to destroy an entire world crossed a line that even warfare should respect. Through her neural link, she shared this anger with the Eternal Dawn, and the ship responded with weapons that had never been activated since its creation. The vessel's hull opened to reveal arrays of devices that made space itself ripple with power. Unleashing the final protocol, the Eternal Dawn activated what Guardian Prime called the Final Protocol. Weapons that the architects had built but hoped never to use. Reality around the Vanguard fleet began to distort as the ship's most powerful systems came online. Space twisted and folded, creating zones where cause and effect operated according to rules that mortal minds could not comprehend. Vanguard ships found themselves attacking their own vessels as the space around them became a maze of dimensional loops. Admiral Bloodclaw's flagship fired its main guns and watched in horror as the energy beams curved through twisted space to strike his own ship. The universe itself had become a weapon turned against them. Sarah felt the incredible power at her command, but also sensed the responsibility that came with it. The Eternal Dawn was not just a ship, but a tool of cosmic justice designed to protect all life against threats that conventional forces could not handle. She was no longer just a human explorer, but the guardian of something far greater than herself. The tide turns within minutes. The Vanguard fleet was reduced from 200 warships to barely a dozen survivors. The remaining vessels limped through space, their weapons useless, and their hulls scarred by forces they could not understand. Admiral Bloodclaw's flagship was powerless, its systems overloaded by feedback from weapons that had targeted his own ship. Sarah opened a communication channel to the surviving Vanguard vessels and spoke with a voice that carried the authority of the Eternal Dawn. She offered the enemy survivors a choice. They could surrender and face justice for their crimes against countless species, or they could continue fighting and face complete annihilation. There would be no third option. Admiral Bloodclaw, his pride shattered and his fleet destroyed, chose surrender over certain death. The remaining Vanguard ships powered down their weapons and submitted to boarding parties from the Eternal Dawn. Sarah felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness as she realized that this victory marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of something far greater. The true enemy, revealed Guardian Prime, materialized on the Eternal Dawn's bridge and congratulated Sarah on her victory, but warned that the real test was yet to come. The Vanguard Empire was powerful by current galactic standards, but they were nothing compared to the threat that had destroyed the architects. The AI displayed images from the edge of the galaxy showing something vast and dark approaching inhabited space. The Devourers were not a single species, but a collective consciousness that consumed entire galaxies to fuel its growth. They had already destroyed civilizations in distant regions of the universe and were, slowly but inevitably, moving toward the Milky Way. The architects had calculated that the Devourers would arrive within a few centuries, long enough to prepare, but not long enough to develop completely new technologies. Sarah realized that her bonding with the eternal dawn was not the end of her journey, but the beginning of a much larger mission. Humanity would need to unite the species of the galaxy and prepare for a war unlike anything in recorded history. The ship she commanded was powerful, but even the eternal dawn could not face the Devourers alone. Building the alliance, the defeat of the Vanguard fleet sent shockwaves throughout the galactic community. Species that had never paid attention to humanity suddenly wanted to establish diplomatic relations. The demonstration of the eternal dawn's power had proven that humans possessed technology beyond anything currently known, making them valuable allies or dangerous enemies. Dr. Webb worked with Guardian Prime to establish communication protocols with major galactic powers, while Tom Rodriguez studied the ship's manufacturing capabilities. The Eternal Dawn could produce smaller vessels based on architect technology, though none would match the flagship's ultimate capabilities. These ships could form the core of a defense fleet capable of facing the coming threat. Sarah found herself becoming not just a ship captain, but a leader of the emerging alliance against the Devourers. Her neural link with the Eternal Dawn gave her access to databases containing the history and capabilities of every known species in the galaxy. This knowledge would be crucial for building the coalition needed to survive the approaching darkness. The new dawn, 6 months after the battle at Kepler-4 for to see. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn and watched construction ships, building the first fleet of human-designed vessels using architect technology. The shipyard in orbit around Earth was protected by defensive systems that made it the most secure location in known space. But Sarah knew that even these defenses would not be enough when the Devourers finally arrived. The Galactic Alliance was growing stronger each day as former enemies united against the common threat. The Vanguard survivors had provided crucial intelligence about military capabilities throughout their former empire, while other species contributed their own unique technologies and tactical knowledge. Humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy. Guardian Prime appeared beside Sarah and informed her that long-range sensors had detected the first Devourer scouts entering the galaxy's outer rim. The enemy was still decades away from reaching inhabited space, but their advanced forces were already beginning to consume uninhabited star systems. The time for preparation was running short, and the real test of human leadership was about to begin. The Guardian's legacy. Sarah placed her hand on the Eternal Dawn's control interface and felt the ship's readiness for the challenges ahead. The vessel had been waiting millions of years for this moment, and now it had found a species worthy of its power. The neural link between human creativity and architect technology had created something greater than either could achieve alone. The galaxy would remember this day as the moment when humanity stepped forward to lead the fight against impossible odds. The Eternal Dawn was no longer just a ship, but a symbol of hope for all life in the galaxy. Whatever came next, the human species would face it with ancient wisdom, advanced technology, and the stubborn determination that had carried them from a single world to the stars. As the construction ships continued their work and diplomatic envoys arrived from across the galaxy, Sarah smiled and felt the future spreading out before them like the vast expanse of space itself. The Devourers would come, but they would find the galaxy ready and waiting, protected by the ultimate fusion of human will and architect technology. The real adventure was just beginning. The promise of tomorrow, the story of the Eternal Dawn, would become legend, told throughout the galaxy as proof that even the smallest species could rise to greatness when faced with impossible challenges. Humanity had been chosen by an ancient civilization not for their technology or their strength, but for their ability to adapt, to create, and to never surrender in the face of overwhelming odds. Sarah Chen, once a simple explorer, had become the guardian of galactic civilization and the wielder of the most powerful weapon ever created. But more than that, she had become proof that humanity's greatest strength was not in the tools they used, but in the spirit that drove them to use those tools for the protection of all life. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it now had guardians who would never give up, never back down, and never stop fighting for the future of all living beings. The eternal dawn sailed through space toward humanity's destiny, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of countless species who had found in human determination something worth believing in. The stars themselves seemed brighter, knowing that they were protected by the ultimate fusion of ancient wisdom and human will. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be. Asterisk.